Welcome to the Humans of Hospitality podcast. I know so many of you listening to this show love your local bar, your local restaurant, maybe your local hotel, and have so many fond memories of time in hospitality businesses. This is the podcast where we get to chat to the human beings behind the scenes of that industry. Maybe the chefs or the bakers or the coffee roasters or the gin distillers or the craft brewers or the entrepreneurs, but all doing an amazing job of making sure that hospitality stays interesting and the big, dull, formulaic brands do not take over our high street. Please enjoy the show. In this week's conversation, I am speaking to the lovely Joy from Seaspring Seeds. Now, Michael and Joy at Seaspring Seeds are chili growing experts and legends who took the world by surprise one April the 1st when they revealed they developed the world's hottest chili plant, the Dorset Naga. It wasn't an April Fool, even though it seemed utterly absurd that this world record-breaking chili had been reared in a lush, damp corner of Dorset, far removed from its original Bangladeshi home. And the Dorset Naga is just one of the many wonderful chilies grown by the couple, along with a wide range of vegetable seeds carefully selected for their productivity and their flavour, like the tender sweet roots of the Primo carrot. In this programme, I get some great chili culinary tips from Joy, as well as an insight into the incredibly huge dedication and patience that goes into creating these tiny, tiny miracles. Literally the seeds of life. This conversation blew my mind. I learned so much, and I very much hope you enjoy this week's podcast. Joy, thank you so much for sparing the time. Here we are, Seaspring Seeds and I say this, people who have heard a few of these podcasts now will be getting bored of me saying I drive across the country and get to these amazing places, but I'm literally can see the sea out of the window. We are flooded by light. It's a beautiful day. Can you just explain, where are we in the world, please?
Right. We're in a village called West Bexington. It's between Abbotsbury and Bridport, right on the coast. It's a beautiful little village, just facing on the south coast, looking straight out to the sea. Yes,
it's amazing, and it's a dead end, isn't it? So I'm going to feel slightly guilty for saying where we are and then saying how beautiful it is, because all of a sudden there'll be people rocking up. Although there's a pub in the village that might appreciate.
There's a pub,
the business.
and there's a fancy restaurant. It used to be a beach cafe, but now it's quite a high end restaurant.
Yeah,
which is
a
shame.
To do with the Hive as well?
It belongs to the Hive. Yes.
Okay, I literally just saw it a few minutes ago when
right at the bottom by the sea. Yes,
amazing location. But okay, it's gone a bit fancy.
But in my mind, I'm sure they're good guys, and the food is probably wonderful. But in my mind, it's a shame it's not a cafe. It's not a welcoming place for people who go to the beach.
Right.
But that's just
it's
me.
Tricky.
Yes,
I run a restaurant on the beach as well, so but it's.
But you've got lots of other things going around.
Yes,
that's all there is.
Yeah, okay.
People who go to the beach, there's nothing there at all for them.
So you don't mind because presumably in the summer, lots of tourists end up driving past the front.
Yes, well, it's a dead end. It goes down to the sea and that's it. So everybody who goes down will come back up again.
Yeah,
it works for us because we sell chilies on the table on the road.
Oh,
so they drive down, they see them, and then they buy them when they leave. So it works.
So
perfectly.
I don't need to feel guilty then about saying that it's well worth going. I've never been down that dead end, and I would have driven past the end of the road a few times, but not heard of the place. You're only 60 miles from where I live. The only photos I carried when I went travelling 20 years ago were pictures of the Jurassic coast and this stretch of coastline because it's so beautiful.
It's lovely, absolutely
so
beautiful.
To have not made this bit, and then you're literally on a slope. We've just had a little walk around behind, and because you're on a slope south facing, you get, if there's any sunshine, you literally get it the whole time.
Yes, the house is on the road, but then our nursery is out behind us, and it's all on a slope facing out to the sea. So all the light, the sun rises in the east and swings around shine on us the whole time. Also shines on the sea, and the light reflects back, so we have a lot of light.
It's incredible. Yeah. And you're from here, as you? Is this your?
I actually grew up in this village. Yes,
amazing.
Yes. I've travelled quite a bit in between, and then we moved back here.
Yeah, excellent. So, where does the growing kind of seed come from in your life? Then, what's your first memories of growing seeds? Was this something that you were doing as a child? Or?
Growing, yes. My parents, my father had a market garden, so I've been growing vegetables all my life, and then I studied agriculture at university, and then did a PhD and got into agriculture research. So I've always been part of growing or food production one way or another.
Yeah, and then you ended up heading off to the US, I think. Is that right? Can you just explain how did that happen, and what on earth were you doing there?
I met Michael, my husband, at a grassland conference. Believe it or not, every 4 years there's an international conference about grasslands.
Is there?
And I met him there. And
this is in America?
That time it was in America, but it goes all over the world,
right.
quite literally. And we ended up getting married after a few years, and we lived in the Caribbean. Lived in Texas first, and then the Caribbean, the US Virgin Islands.
Oh, really?
And before we moved back up there for 5 years, and then moved back here.
And while you were there, that was predominantly doing research and stuff as well?
Michael was the program leader of the agronomy department, which is research into mostly forages for animals, and I was the natural resource specialist, which was the best job in the world. It was all about, not in America, natural resources means plants and animals and fish and wildlife. So I was just dealing with all that of the Caribbean and ecology and how to look after it and advising farmers on what to do and things like that.
Really? Yeah, I'm in awe, because we're also in what I guess is, so a lot of people would be the front room of their house, but in yours is some sort of kind of almost library. I don't think I've ever seen so many books and piles of books and bookshelves that are literally bowing. The amount of knowledge in this room, and I've got a sneaky feeling that I've only known you for 20 minutes, but I think there's a significant amount of knowledge in your head as well, isn't there? So what were some of the key things that you were researching, and did they have an impact on you wanting to kind of stay in this field?
My PhD and Michael's was in grassland agronomy, so it was agriculture, so very, very different to growing vegetables. But the basics are there. I mean, if you understand about plants and how they grow, and about the soil and soil nutrition and things like that, then it's all there, and then you can just sort of switch from agriculture to horticulture without any problems.
Really? So what were you doing in grasslands though? Again, I find everything interesting. So were you trying to make sure that they survive, or what their job is, or what they do?
It was agricultural grasses, so production. I mean, farmers want to get as much from their grass as they can. This is for grains? This is for grazing,
okay,
yes.
Gotcha.
And the wonderful thing about grass as a crop is that it's a perennial. So what you do 1 year, or even 10 years ahead in the past, will affect how it's growing now. So everything is interrelated. You can't just do something and that's it. It all combines to what's going to happen next year and the year after and the year after. So it's an incredibly complicated system, and that's partly what makes grasslands so much fun.
Right. So did the stuff you learned have an impact then on farming? Or?
I don't know. That's a good point. I mean, yeah, with research, apart from the few people who were absolutely brilliant, I mean, it's a lot of grind with a little bit of knowledge that everybody builds on. So my research, at one point, I was the only person in the world who knew what I knew. I wrote papers, wrote a thesis, and hopefully other people have built on that and built the knowledge further. Right. So I might have done, but who knows?
Okay, and Michael's continuing to do that literally as we speak, is he?
Michael's research was similar to mine for his PhD, but what he's doing now is he's just fascinated about food, actually, about how, in particular at the moment, how chilies where chilies belong in the British diet, not just now, but in the past. And there's a general belief that the British have only just discovered chilies, but that's not true at all. I mean, they've been grown in Britain almost from the moment that Columbus discovered it. They walked straight back and they were grown here. Really? So they've been grown in Britain, admittedly by the rich land gentry who had gardeners who could to do it. But, I mean, Tabasco sauce has been imported into Britain for over 100 years, and it gets written in recipes from way back. I'm being careful what I say because this is Michael's research.
Sorry to go off on a tangent.
I don't want to get
it's not been published
wrong.
yet. I was going to say you better not give away the the ending.
But,
so, when is this for a book or is this for
a book? Yes,
really?
Yes.
When's that going to be ready? Or is that the never ending? Never ask an author when a book's going to be ready. It's eternal. So what was the trigger point then to come back to the UK from the US?
Trigger points. It was always the plan to do so. I think. When you've got two families in two different countries, you have to choose a country.
Yeah.
You can't live in both.
Very true. How did you debate that argument?
I don't know.
It was easy.
I think Michael found still does, the consumerism of the States a little bit unpalatable.
Yeah.
He lives a very moral life, does Michael.
Hence his shock when I turned up in my 4x4, I think. He was like, what are you doing on my grass, on my land? So, yeah, I'll apologise before I go. So you came back with specifically knowing that you were going to
We'd already
bought
the land. It wasn't a nursery then, but we'd already bought it.
Whilst you were in
Well,
America?
when we were in the Caribbean.
Specifically
yes.
to
to come back to and to grow, yes.
Did you know what you were going to grow?
Well, to start with, just general vegetables. We grew high-end vegetables and sold them to restaurants.
Right.
And we did that for about 10 years.
Oh, how long ago was this that you came back?
1989.
Oh, gosh, a long
So
time.
we've been here 30 years now.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah,
okay. And that was, you were selling those to local restaurants?
Local restaurants, yes, yeah.
Right.
Twice a week I'd phone up, get the orders, pick and deliver that day, yes.
Right. Amazing.
And that worked very well, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So then it's, you still do that, or you made the change?
We've completely changed now. It's in '94 we started a business called Peppers by Post. And as far as we could tell, this was before the internet at all. But as far as we could tell, nobody else was growing fresh chilies in Britain. There was no chili farms or anything. And this was a bit revolutionary. And the supermarket chilies were very, very, very ordinary. Nothing, no interest, no flavour of anything. So we selected 10. I think it was 10 varieties of chilies, ranging from the poblano, which is a very large, very musty, very meaty flavoured, very mild chili from Mexico. Absolutely delicious chili, but really, really mild, right up to one of the hottest habaneros we could find, and everything in between. And we sold them through by mail order. This was when people wrote an order form and sent a cheque through the post.
And what made you change? You were growing other vegetables? Did you just dabbled in chilies, or there was that interest there from when you were overseas?
There was interest in growing. We found that we were very good at growing chilies. A big supermarket opened up in Bridport, and we weren't just selling to restaurants, we were also selling to greengrocers and things. And we felt the writing was on the wall a bit. And I think we were looking for a change, yes.
Okay. Writing on the wall because it was becoming dominated by bigger farms?
That's right, yes.
Right.
Yeah. So we got into chilies, and it was just a small sideline, but very quickly it became the enterprise,
right.
and we gradually grew less and less other vegetables for selling.
Okay. And this was using your knowledge from your I suppose your life really, but your studies. I mean, because you weren't just going out there and doing what the layman does and buy some chili seeds and planting them, growing them. But you were actually
if you're trained to do research, so I wasn't using my knowledge from my PhD at all, because that was on grasslands. But there is a certain mindset. There's a certain way of thinking. And you understand about how plants grow and photosynthesis and all that. So yes, I guess we did use it because I felt there was a training behind what we were doing.
Yeah. Okay.
To some extent.
And then you've become famous for, a real range of chilies, but I guess the Dorset Naga is the one that I certainly hear the most of. I was saying to you earlier that we've used it in mojitos with a little bit to add some fire to our mojito drinks, and a nice Dorset Bloody Mary that adds a little bit of heat. So how did that come about? Were you specifically trying to create one of the hottest chilies in the world, or?
No, there's a good story with the Dorset Naga. I'll go
Please
through
tell.
it.
Yeah.
With Peppers by Post, we wanted to. We only were selling chilies in the harvest season, and there's a finite time. So we wanted to start selling fresh chilies as early as we could in the season, but we didn't, because we had a catalogue and it was by mail order. We couldn't chop and change, so we wanted to have everything ready at the same time. If somebody made an order and it included the hottest one, and it wasn't ready, then we would have to hold the order back till it was, and that doesn't work very well. So we were looking for a hot chili, very, very the hottest chili in our range, which would ripen early. Now the hottest chilies that are around are mostly a type of broad range of chilies called habanero, but they are traditionally eaten ripe. And so that adds on about 3 weeks to the growing period before you can start picking them. And then we discovered that the Bangladeshis, if you go to an Asian shop, there'd always be this little bowl of chilies by the counter of green chilies that were treated really specially. Not like all the chilies in the big boxes everywhere else where you could buy it by the kilo. These ones you had to buy by the each, and they were quite expensive. So we found out more about it. And it was always green. They were always green. Found out more about it. Found out that it's the same species as the habanero. Beautiful aroma. Absolutely amazing. And it was called the Naga Moorish. So very hard to get seed of it because it's picked immature and brought over from Bangladesh. Nobody's selling seeds. So we struggled to get seeds, struggled to get plants. But eventually we had 10 plants. Now the Naga Moorish is what's called a landrace variety from Bangladesh. And that means that it's never been developed. It just grows there naturally. It's like looking at a weed and saying, I mean, in Britain, it just grows there naturally. So different areas, it might be slightly different, but it's all the same thing. So the Naga Moorish, so the 10 plants we had, some were very small, some were quite large, some had big fruit, some had smaller fruit. And so we took about 8 years, I think, making a selection each year, deciding what characteristic we liked, and then taking the selection, putting the ones we liked into isolation so they couldn't be pollinated elsewhere. So they self-pollinated, and then the seed would breed true. Then we take that out, grow it out, make another selection, do it again. And after about 8 years, we felt we had a stable line which was uniform, passed what's called the DUS tests in plant breeding. Distinctive, it was what we had was distinctive. It stood out as being different to the Naga Moorish plants that we originally had. DUS, uniform. So if you grow 100 plants, 1,000 plants, they all look the same. And S, stable. If you grow 1 year to the next, it's going to look the same. And only then can you consider you've got a new variety.
Right.
At that point, we decided to find out how hot it was.
Okay.
Nowhere in Britain tested chilies for heat level at that time. Now there are lots of places, but no. So Michael ground down some of the chili powder, took it to the States, when he was visiting family then, and a few weeks later we got a phone call from somebody, an American in the lab, who'd been testing chilies all his life, and he said he had never tested a chili that hot in his whole life after his whole career, and it turned out that it was almost double the Guinness World Record holder at that time. So it was just mind-blowingly hot.
Incredible.
Much, yeah, I mean, double the Guinness World Record. It held this record for 12 years.
You'd presumably tasted it at this point. Had you blown your head off
Well,
a few times?
I knew it was way too hot for me right from the
Yeah.
beginning. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And but even then, Michael thought, well, maybe there's a mistake. So we sent it to another lab, and they came out with exactly the same result. Even then, we thought, how can we have found a chili hotter than anything else in the world?
Yeah. Grown in Dorset, in England,
right.
where you'd imagine it would have been grown somewhere, I would have presumed the tropics or
That's
somewhere
right.
hot.
I mean, in England, so anyway, we made up a website all about it, called it Dorset Naga, because Naga, it is a Naga, but it's not Naga Moorish anymore. But having bred it for 8 years, it was now bred to grow well in Dorset, so Dorset Naga. And we told a friend who was a reporter on our local newspaper in Bridport, tiny little town, and that was all we did. It just so happened that was in March. It just so happened that it went out, just because it goes out, the newspaper goes out every week, it went out on the 31st of March. So we didn't know this, but the national papers always look through local newspapers. They picked it up and it went worldwide on April the 1st.
Really?
And that the next day we were getting phone calls from everywhere. I have a friend who was working in Africa, and he read about it that day. I woke up and it was on the BBC World Service radio. Canada, Australia, everywhere we were getting phone calls about it. It was just quite amazing.
On April the 1st.
On April the 1st.
So were they phoning to check it was real?
Everybody thought it was a joke, but it turned out not to be.
Wow.
But for us, it meant that we had an incredibly hot chili that we could sell green, because traditionally the Bangladeshis eat it green. So that was perfectly legit for us to pick it green. So we could start selling it at the same time as we could sell all the other chilies.
Okay. And then so if you sell it green, it continues to...
It will ripen to a red, yes. Yeah.
Right.
It goes on ripening.
And the heat changes during
hotter.
that process?
Gets hotter.
That's what
ripens
adds
up,
to it.
yes,
So,
yes.
amazing. Yeah. So I had no idea, again, until we were walking round, and I was saying to this to you when you just showed me around, but never really thought about how you develop sort of seeds and how you need to stop the bees. You were saying that you can't let the bees kind of pollinate them because you really need to protect them. So you've done that presumably with a number of different chilies. Have you now got a number of chilies that are specifically kind of suited to this environment? And 8 years is exceptionally patient.
That's why breeding takes a long time. Making a cross is dead easy. Anybody can make a cross, but you're going to get the next generation is going to be quite a wide genetic variation, and so you have to then what takes the time is then isolating what's called the phenotype, the characteristics, what it's going to look like, and that you just narrowing down the genetic base a bit so that it's uniform, and that's what takes the time. Yes.
Right. How do you get a cross of seeds then?
Well, you get 2 different varieties, put pollen from one to the other, and there you are. Yes.
You do this with, You can
Excuse
do that. My stupid questions.
You can do that.
As somebody who's only ever killed the plants in my kitchen, I struggle to keep my basil plant alive. So I'm thinking, so I get 2. No, I don't get 2 seeds and go, hey, look, boy seed, girl seed. So how do you actually get pollen out? This is done by hand with.
We've hardly done that because it happens so easily, naturally. I mean,
right.
That's
just
why
put them next to each other.
That's why when we got to breeding things, we don't want bees, because bee going from one variety to another will make a cross.
Right.
And what you get from that, the seed that you save from that will then be a mix of the two.
Yeah. So if you do want to cross breed, I think about breeding in animals. You see, I know how they work. I've watched the Discovery Planet, but you can literally just put the plants next to each other. You need the bees to kind of to do the work, or if
yes, you need the bees for that.
You need the bees,
but there's also just natural mutation. What happens is whenever we grow something, if there's anything which isn't completely uniform, which is different, very often if it's got something that looks interesting, we'll take that out, separate it out. We'll strip off all the flowers, leaving just buds, all the chilies, all the buds, all the flowers, leaving just buds. So the buds won't, and then we put a netting over it so no pollinators can get in. And so we know that because the buds have been closed, we know it hasn't been pollinated by a bee.
Okay.
And the beautiful thing about chilies is that they're self-pollinating. Each flower has the female flower part and then the male stamens, which have got the pollen, and they pollinate themselves. So that if you put netting over it and no pollinating insects can get in, you know that it will self-pollinate and breed true.
Right. So I learnt all about the pedigree Frisian cows a few weeks ago with Kerry Cryer up at Brinkworth, and
it's all the same
that
thing.
Blew my mind as well. The fact that they're kind of they keep it very the biosecurity, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I had no idea. And again, when you say it makes perfect sense that that's exactly what you do with seeds. But this is why I think. I love having these conversations because I'm pretty sure, I'm not the thickest man on the street, so I'm pretty sure that the public have got no idea of the work that goes into it. And when they, when they buy their packs of chilies, they've got no comprehension. Presumably in chili world, they're in the same as everything else. You've got loads of imported cheap stuff, and then you've got your kind of your premium local stuff. Is that fair? Or?
Yes, it is. A lot of fresh chilies grown in Africa and imported in, and sort of all in Asia as well, and there used to be just fairly standard cayenne type chilies, or what's called Fresno, which is a little bit like a jalapeno, and but now there's a lot more around, but the supermarkets are atrocious at selling, and they're atrocious at labelling, and they label things wrong. So, we did a study a while back looking at habaneros, Scotch bonnets. The Scotch bonnet is a habanero of a particular shape. So the supermarkets were selling Scotch bonnets, and traditionally Scotch bonnets should be hot. That's, I mean, they're not always, but that's the traditional accepted thing. So supermarkets selling these Scotch bonnets, and we were buying packets which were different, which were different even species, let alone, and some of them had no heat whatsoever. So you couldn't buy it and be guaranteed to get what you're getting at all.
Seems strange, and I noticed that with. I think there's this sort of, because of the ignorance of chilies, and you just see the little pack in the supermarket and you buy them. But yeah, you don't get any kind of flavour. Sometimes you get heat, but there's a real lack of flavour. But I don't particularly remember going and seeing the kind of, the finest range and the taste the different ranges. You just seem to see these bulk standard chilies. Where do you go to get really good chilies?
Well, that's the trouble. I mean, we stopped doing peppers by post now because we're into the seeds and the breeding, so we sell the seeds. It's not easy to get good chilies. That is the trouble, and that's why if you're really into your chilies, you should grow them.
Right.
Because you can't buy these. There's so many interesting chilies. There's so many. They've got flavours. And they're beautiful plants. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if you haven't got much space. There are lots of small varieties which grow on the windowsills. Really? So, but there isn't a chili growing culture, commercial culture. There were a couple of big chili growers to sell for the supermarkets, but you won't go to greengrocer and get good chilies.
Okay, is that because it's harder to grow them in the UK? You've clearly got perfect land, but there must be other people who've got great land for growing chilies. Why don't we grow them on a commercial level?
All the people I know who grow chilies make sauces out of them. They go, and there's a really big demand for nice chili sauces now, and there's some really good tasting ones around, and some really good companies as well doing it. But they're looking for the best quality chilies, best tasting chilies. And so they might grow them themselves. They might deal with a grower. Not many growers sell them. Certainly not in the quantity that could cover the country. There might be a grower that sells to a greengrocer, but they're not going to expand that much. Chilies need to be grown indoors. They need polytunnels. They need conservatories. The big growers, chili growers, sell to supermarkets.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Easy to grow them seeds. And then, so Peppers by Post at the time was literally you were selling the finished product. You weren't selling the seed and the plants at that time. Mm-hmm. How long did you do that for?
We did that we started in 1994 and we did it for about 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. And what made that stop? Was that again, it kind of served its purpose and the supermarkets took over again? Or
No, I think every 15 years we seem to change.
Yeah.
There's a cat.
There's a cat arriving. Yeah.
Dorset Naga really changed everything because everybody wanted it and everybody wanted to grow it. And so we got into seed production. Right. And getting into seed production meant we had to think differently. And we did want to change anyway. So that's when we started Seaspring Seeds and got into selling seeds. Right. And although we specialise in chilies, we are vegetable growers. We know vegetables, all types of vegetables, and tomatoes, cucumbers, beetroot, whatever. So we were losing that side of us with Peppers by Post. So Seaspring Seeds, where we sell seeds of all vegetables, sort of reintroduce us back to the vegetable world, I think. Amazing. But we still specialise in chilies.
Yeah. And you sell the chilies as seeds as well as plants and everything else just as seeds?
Yeah. Or? What we do is we have Seaspring Seeds, which sells seeds of all most of vegetables, and then we've also got what we call Seaspring Plants, where we sell chili plants, and we sell chili plug plants, which are sort of young little chili plants, which are about sort of 10 centimetres in size, grown in a Jiffy 7 pellet that we send out through the post. Wow. And we sell those April, May time. Or we take orders from October onwards, but they go out April, May time. And then from June onwards, we sell them in litre pots, mature plants with chilies on them.
Right. Through the post as well?
Through the post, yeah. And we have from the website, but also at shows and from our roadside and things like that.
Okay. And are you selling, this is predominantly then to people, hobby, people growing them at home and stuff like that. Same with your seeds, or are your vegetable seeds sold commercially for restaurants as well? Or?
Yeah. No, we don't sell, with our seeds, we only sell in retail packs. So we don't sell sort of wholesale to commercial growers. We do sell to a few select places, like the Eden Project sells our seeds. So they buy the retail packs and they sell them on, and RHS Wisley Gardens will sell our seeds. So we've selected a few places who we let them sell our packs, but mostly we sell them ourselves. Yes.
Yeah. And I got to enjoy some for lunch today. I was saying I was with Karen at Capriolis, who had some beautiful. I can't remember the names of the different leaves that she was serving
Oriental
me.
salads.
Yes,
Yeah,
but she had this beautiful polytunnel. And again, coming to the end, I think, of the season for the stuff she had. But felt very privileged. And it was a nice link as well to come in before my lunch. How on earth do you actually send a plant in the post? I just find it amazing how much stuff now goes by post. The internet has. I thought the Royal Mail was finished a few years ago because I just thought we're all going to send emails, and now literally everything comes in the post. How on earth? How do you send a chili? I can't keep a chili plant alive in my kitchen in the sunshine. How do you send them through the post?
Well, we buy them what's called blister packs. I mean, they're wonderful things. It's made from a plastic. It's green, it's see-through. It's nice and firm. You put they're shaped so that the pellet is held, the Jiffy 7 pellet that the roots are in, the root ball is held really tight. The little hole, the rest of the plant goes up in there. You clip it shut. Then we've just put the address label and the stamp on that, so the postman can see what he's handling.
Wow.
And it's really neat. I think the packaging is very good. Yeah,
it's amazing.
Really
what can now be done?
That's right.
And have you noticed a people's change? So I guess our interest in food and our willingness to try different foods has really changed. So I think chatting to Karen earlier about charcuterie and saying that 20 years ago you didn't really see charcuterie in this country and probably didn't really see chilies. Whereas now we seem to have really broadened our knowledge. Presumably at the same time that you've developed this amazing range of chilies, you've also seen the public's interest and people cooking with them. Has what we're using changed in your observation in the last
without doubt, yes. And when we started Peppers by Post, it was a very strange thing to do, and we ended up throwing most of our chilies away in the compost heap. But by the time we were finishing it, we couldn't. It seems crazy to stop doing it. We couldn't keep up with the demand because people discovered chilies. With Dorset Naga, I mean, I thought it was going to be a one-hit wonder because the heat level is just incredible. I can't explain how, but some people love it. They really do. And if you can cope with the heat, it's absolutely delicious flavour. So, and people know that, and that's what they're going for. And things, the British and all the different ranges of chili sauces that are available, it's just opened up people's eyes. And I think most people now eat chilies a lot more than they ever did. There's no question.
And have you seen any particular chefs using your products? Have you had any? Because the chefs seem to spot these things coming along and then get in touch and say they want to try it. Any experience or seen it in any particular restaurants where and go, look, there's the Dorset Naga. That's made me proud.
Well, Jamie Oliver did. It was even on Big Brother. But they had a chili tasting thing on Big Brother one time. So yes, then Hugh Fernie Whittenstall did a lot with chilies. We worked with them on growing chilies a fair bit.
Excellent.
His River Cottage series. So yes, it filters into everything. It's just there now.
Must feel quite surreal to go from that. That tiny little village overlooking the sea so locally, and then see this international explosion.
I mean, there are lots of other what we call super hots now. I mean, which are vastly hotter than the other chilies.
Right.
And there are chilies which have been measured hotter than Dorset Naga now, but they're all of this ilk. They've just got really good flavour if you can cope with that searing heat. And people just know about them. They're just everywhere now.
Yeah. So did you say, I presume, did it irritate people, the fact that this little place in Dorset, in a nice cold country, developed one of the hottest chilies in the world? Did you find the kind of more traditional chili growing countries kind of stepping up their game and going, right, we're not going to be beaten? Is there a bit of competition?
There's a big competition between Australia, the States and Britain now to see who can get the hottest chili. At the moment, the record holder is an American with a chili called Carolina Reaper. But it's gone back, it's gone from Australia to Britain to the States, each one getting slightly hotter. All starting with the Dorset Naga.
Brilliant.
And then
you've started a trend.
So started the trend, yes. But
And are you still developing hotter and hotter ones, or are you letting you're letting other people play that game?
Let them play the game.
I love it. You started it. No need to play.
It's a macho thing, which is something which we want everybody to enjoy chilies. We're not into just encouraging the I'm better than you because I like hotter, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which does tend to go with the super hots. Not all. Some people generally really just like it that hot.
Yeah.
But there's so much more to chilies than just that.
Okay. So although the Naga's the famous one, are you still developing new sort of ranges, new products, or?
Yes. I mean, we have one called Dorset Zinger, which originally came from Suriname. Very very similar story, which broke a million. SHU, which is about the heat level of Dorset Naga. So yeah, we're looking at quite a lot. We've got one which we're quite excited about, but that's some years away.
Really?
So,
wow. I love the fact that it takes so many years to do these things. I always thought I tell the story a lot at work with the guys with asparagus, and the fact that it takes 3 years to grow asparagus from seed, and that we do amazing, asparagus from the New Forest, and we shouldn't be flying asparagus from Peru. And if it gets put on the menu in December and January, I get a bit grumpy about it because when it's on form, and that's 3 years. I thought that was special. We grew our own. We rented some land out in the forest and started to grow our own produce.
Really lovely.
And it wasn't very good. The asparagus we grew, we wait. Not only did we wait 3 years, but when we did, it was like, good. Oh god! So you've got to be phenomenally patient. So perhaps
you do. Yeah.
Hats off to you for for doing it. Do you have any particular favourite chili recipes yourself? Do you end up cooking them or eating them, or have you just had enough?
No, it's funny. We get asked a slightly different question to that a lot, which is our favourite chili.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it just depends on your mood. I mean, yes, I love chilies. I mean, and stuffed chilies, the poblano, which is the Mexican chili I mentioned. That's actually the only chili we bother freezing because that flavour is you cannot get that from anything else. What we do is we grill it and burn the skin, and then it sweats off, and it ripens to a very rich brown colour. The Mexicans eat it green, but I think it's better tasting brown, and it's so oily. It's just dripping in oil, and it's so rich, and it really is like a meat equivalent. We're not trying to replace meat, but it's such a filling dish. I can't. It's just lovely. And so I mean that's simply just so milato, just cut up in strips, bit of oil, and make a salad out of it. Oil and vinegar, and it's delicious. Maybe throw in a few tomatoes, and it's the best salad you can imagine. But then stuffed. I mean, if you lots of small ones with thick flesh. If you just scrape them out, stuff them with anything. Then one thing I like is say a pork mincemeat base, and then make a white sauce with coconut milk instead of milk. Yeah. So it's got a really sort of tropical flavour to it, and then bake that.
Goes well with the heat. Have you got any recipes on your website? Or?
We don't, no. We should do.
Sounds like you should do. That's going to be the next book.
This is something between Michael and me.
When Michael finishes his book, can you do the next one and actually do us some great chili recipes?
We really should. This is something we talk about. So.
Yeah, you really should, because that nobody else has got that level of proper knowledge about the authenticity that comes from knowing the history and how they're bred and all that kind of stuff. So. I think it's amazing. So one of the challenges we're facing, and I was chatting to Helen Browning about this, with how are we going to continue to feed the planet, and how do we with as we're approaching 10 billion people on planet Earth, and this necessity for yield and this constant drive to kind of industrialize farming. With your research and your PhD and your knowledge, any thoughts on that? And you're clearly, I know that's not your sector because you're kind of selling seeds for people to grow at home, but have you got an opinion on this challenge around the industrialization of farming and how we keep food tasting really good?
Chili's not going to feed the world.
No,
but they will make your food more interesting.
Yeah.
So that's the whole point about chilies. One thing that we're very keen on is to get people who don't have a garden or don't have a big garden to grow their own vegetables. So people can make a big difference to their diet just by growing salads on a windowsill or herbs on a windowsill. And it's so simple, and you don't need a garden, you don't need any knowledge, you just need to have a try attitude. So I go to a lot of shows, a lot of sort of like an urban garden show or something, trying to persuade people to grow vegetables, even if you haven't got a garden.
Yeah.
And I think that's could make a very big
Yeah,
difference.
all start doing it on a smaller scale.
That's right.
And you say it's easy, and clearly it is for you. But I don't know, too much water, too little water, go away for the weekend, and all my herbs die. How do you actually make it easy?
Yeah.
You must have some secrets.
Going away is the issue. Yes.
Don't go away.
Don't go away. No, have a good neighbour. But watering too little, it wilts. So give it more.
Right.
Too much, make sure it's a free draining pot, so that if it's too much, it'll drain through. If you think you've give it too much and then it's coming out the bottom, the only thing you have to remember is that you're probably washing away nutrients, so you've got to give it some fertiliser occasionally.
Okay.
But provided that, it doesn't matter if you give it too much.
So inside, how do you have a free draining pot? Because you pour water in and then it ends up over your kitchen floor, over your windowsill.
It's got to have a pot. I mean, don't use soil. Soil gets very compacted and in pots and doesn't work. You really have to buy commercial compost of some sort, which will be free draining. Make sure there's drainage holes in the pot, and make sure that if it stands in a saucer, the saucer's not too deep. Because if you have a pot which is, say, 15 centimetres high and you've got a saucer which is 5 centimetres high, then that's going to be waterlogged up to that 5 centimetres if it's catching the water.
Okay.
So if you have a narrow, shallow saucer and water runs out of that, then give it less.
Okay. And any, I know you can grow herbs and you can grow chilies inside. Mm-hmm. Any vegetables that you can grow on your windowsill in your kitchen as well?
Well, all salads. I mean, things like the Karen grew, the mizunas, the pak choys, the tatsoys, all these Oriental salads. If you grow them in containers, small pots, doesn't matter, doesn't have to be very big, and then you cut them as baby leaves when they're about 10, 15 centimetres high. They will regrow, so you don't have to keep sowing them.
Right.
Just cut them high, as long as you don't damage the growing point where the leaves are produced, they'll regrow. So lettuces, you don't have to have fully headed lettuces, just cut them as baby leaves.
And when do you need to sow them?
Well, if you're doing it in your house, you can do it any time.
Really? So literally, we should be hitting your website, putting them in some compost on the windowsill in the daylight. And how long from seed to the point where I'm munching on my baby leaves?
If you're doing Oriental salads, they're very quick.
Yeah.
They'll germinate within. They'll be, certainly by a week. They'll be coming up quite.
Really?
Well, they'll be fully up. If it's in your house, if it's in a living environment with warm temperatures, and then when they're sort of about 10 centimetres high, so a few weeks, about 3 weeks.
Amazing.
Pea shoots are even faster.
Yeah.
You can buy peas and they pop straight up.
Right. And actually, looking last night on the website, I saw Nigel, your very famous chili plant, and that literally blew my mind, because you're sowing the seed in January, and by October this thing was huge with 2,500 chilies on it. Right. So you literally, plant Jan or Feb, and you're going to get chilies. Not as many as Nigel, but just tell us about Nigel.
Okay, Nigel was a Dorset Naga plant. Dorset Naga is a difficult plant to grow. It belongs to a species which does need a bit of care. So don't start there. So if you've never grown chilies before, don't start with the Dorset Naga. But a lot of people grow it, and a lot of people come to advice and saying they're only getting a few fruit. But its potential is enormous. So we grew Nigel just to show people what it can do. And we sowed the seed 20th of January. We didn't sow it especially for Nigel, because we sell chili Naga plants. So we sowed the seed and we raised about 1,000 plants. In May, I took one of those plants out of the 1,000. So it hadn't been treated specially at all. Put it into a pot which is 160 litres in size. That's a big pot. And then from May onwards, middle of May onwards, I made sure that it was never short of water, never short of nutrients, had as much light as possible. We kept it in a polytunnel with all that big root space. And it grew to about 8 feet tall. I couldn't get my arms around it. I mean, it was about 8 feet wide as well, about several feet taller than I was. And when beginning of November, when it was 10.5 months from the day we sowed it, we picked 2,500 chilies off it. And for some reason, he got called Nigel. I don't know why or how, but that's what happened.
Yeah, it's worth going on, and I don't know what you Google on there. How do you find it on YouTube? So I looked at it last night, but maybe I'll put it in the show notes actually for the podcast.
Giant Naga would work. Or,
I would have presumed it would have taken years to get to that size, but the speed that it grew.
That was just, I mean, 2 weeks to germinate. So we're talking about 10 months growth from tiny seedling to an 8-foot tall plant.
Mind blowing.
And
you created it.
Yeah.
Hats off to you.
Yeah.
So for the novice then, who's sitting there or out walking his dog now or driving his car, who's thinking, okay, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to try and grow some chilies. Good. What's a great species to go for when they hit your website?
Right. Okay. There are 5 species of chilies that people that grow, but the most common ones is Capsicum annuum and Capsicum chinensis. The Capsicum annuum are the cayennes, the jalapenos, the poblanos, the serranos, all that type. Now these are much easier to grow than the Capsicum chinensis, which are the Scotch bonnets, the habanero types, and the Naga types. The annuums are faster growing, faster germinating, slightly less fussy about conditions and that sort of thing.
Really?
So
it just means they can cope with a little bit more neglect. Is that the
that's
basic?
Right.
And that might be whether that's temperature or water. So if they
mostly it means that they can cope with lower temperatures and slightly poorer light conditions, because chilies need a lot of light and plenty of warmth. Yes.
Okay. So put them somewhere sunny. But we need to be planting them now for chilies. Or
yes, if you want to do it from seed, really January, February time, you up to about mid-March. April, which is soon now, is getting late.
Fine, but you sell not just the Nagas in.
Yes, if really for chilies are actually difficult to germinate. Even the Capsicum annuums, you have to sow them early. They need plenty of warmth, and they need it January, February. That's winter time, and you're not really prepared for growing then. Yeah. So the solution is buy chili plug plants. Yeah, and plenty of people do them. We reckon we do the best. I'm
sure you do. and you do the plug plants in a variety as well.
We do about, I can't remember this year, about 35, 40 different varieties. So people can they can choose exactly what they want.
Okay. And on the website it says suitable for idiots or...
well,
I'm sure you're not that harsh.
If you're buying a plug plant, if you're buying a plug plant, it doesn't matter if you go for the chinensis, the Scotch bonnets, because the difficult phase is over. It's the first 2 or 3 months of their life, which is the difficult bit. If you get that right, then all you need to do is put them in a pot, put them in a warm place where there's plenty of light, and they'll do fine. Okay,
can I take one with me? I'm going to send you photos. I'm going to try and keep one alive until September.
I will send. They're not ready yet, but I will send you one in April.
I will. Yes, you've motivated me to try way harder than I normally do.
They really are easy. Just water them and then give them lots of light.
You've not seen my mints, which I think is a weed. It's supposed to grow anywhere, isn't it? But even that got
You'll fall in love with the chili plant. They really are.
No, I think it's great. I was saying to you when we were walking around your garden that I did buy one. I think probably last September, October time, not realising that was just the end.
When the winter comes.
And it didn't do so well. But they regrow, don't they?
Yeah, well, chilies, sweet peppers and chili peppers, they are perennials. Right. They will live for many years. Yeah. But that's in the tropics, right, where they don't have winter. So in Britain, I mean, tomatoes are perennials as well, but we treat them as annuals. Right. When we hit the winter, that's sort of the end.
I won't beat myself up then. I won't feel bad. Don't. It wasn't my fault. I live in England.
No. I mean, you can keep them through the winter, but I can't. What's the point?
Okay. So where do people go then to find out more about you? To follow you on social media as well, or is it just your website? Or?
Yes, I try to do social media, and I do Facebook and Twitter. I trying to start Instagram, I just haven't got to it. Sometimes I'm good at it, other times I'm not, because it's just time-wise. Yeah. I mean, I'd love to do it. So I am on there, yes. So Facebook.com/seaspringseeds. Okay. And we have one that's for growing vegetables generally, and /home of the Dorset Naga for anything on chilies.
Perfect.
And then we do Twitter as well. So.
Okay. Do you have a team here that help you with the growing and stuff like that as well? You've got how many acres was it you said you've got out the back?
Well, we have 15 acres, but we don't grow on that. So we have 3 horses that use most of it. Okay. Yes. So most of what we have is just in the polytunnels and greenhouses. So in area, it's in square yards rather than acres.
And you manage it yourselves between you and Michael?
We do. There's Michael and me. We do hire people. We have some young teenagers come in every Saturday morning, and they're great. So we enjoy them. And then another person who comes in sort of bits. We're never quite sure which day he's coming, but we work it out every week.
Excellent.
Comes
And you change every 15 years, so what's next? So
I don't know.
What you've done all sorts. What's the next direction? Do
That's
you know
a good point, yes. I'd like to think we'd stick with Sea Spring seeds, partly because there's so much. It keeps changing. Every variety that we sell of seeds, we've grown, we've tasted, we've trialed. So there's constantly new varieties. Not just the chilies that we breed, but we're looking to what other people breed and produce. So there's so much. It's quite exciting. I mean, it sounds a bit, I don't know.
No,
it is quite exciting.
I think it is exciting.
We get so excited about what's coming up and what we can trial. And when we find a good variety, it's thrilling. Whether it's a carrot or whether it's a tomato.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What defines a good carrot when you find one? How do you go, yes, this is the one?
Oh, there's all sorts. I mean, we sell one called Primo, which is, I think it's a wonderful one because it starts to colour up and flavour up when it's very young. So mostly when you take out all these thin-ins, they're pale and there's nothing to them. I mean, you can eat them, but with Primo, it starts getting colour really young. So they make great small bunching carrots, and you can put them in tubs and just keep pulling them very young. Yeah. And it's really good tasting, and very, very tender. So
amazing. Well, you've inspired me. I'm sure you've done the same to people listening. I'm just so grateful that people like you exist in the world who kind of do who've got the patience and the ability to spend 8 years protecting a chili seed from bumblebees who want to pollinate and creating these amazing things. So thank you for doing what you do. Good luck. Thanks for sharing the story. Like I say, I'll put the website and some links, and I'm going to grow some stuff and take a few photos and share it on social media as well. But Joy, thank you so much for spending the time. It's been brilliant.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
So there you have it. You have reached the end of another episode of the Humans of Hospitality podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Please go and visit our website, humansofhospitality.co.uk, for the show notes and extra episodes and information. And whilst you're there, don't forget to sign up for our newsletter and to receive free materials all about the humans behind our incredible industry. Lastly, if you could subscribe, rate and review this podcast, you will be massively helping me out, and it would be hugely appreciated. Thank you so much. We'll be launching another podcast in just 7 days' time. Cheers.